What if I told you that your polite refusal to make a simple 5-minute phone call is probably costing you hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars a year?
Yeah, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it really isn't.
It really isn't. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and according to the research we're looking at today, nearly 70% of people who ask their credit card company for a lower interest rate actually get one.
70%, that is a massive success rate.
Right. But here is the kicker. Only 25% of us ever pick up the phone to actually ask.
It is a staggering statistic. I mean, we're completely willing to, stress over the price of groceries every week, but we leave this massive leverage on the table just to avoid a brief moment of social friction.
Oh, for sure. And that avoidance is exactly what we are tackling today. So, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to construct a comprehensive 90-day financial reset for you.
Which is so needed right now.
Definitely. We are looking at how to move from reactive, scattered financial chaos to a rock-solid compounding wealth system. And we're doing this without relying on that tired, frankly insulting cliche of, just giving up your daily latte.
Because the goal of a financial reset isn't to force you into the state of permanent deprivation. I mean, who wants to live like that?
Nobody. Doesn't work.
Exactly. The goal is system design. You want to build an infrastructure where your money actually does what you want it to do instead of just evaporating before the end of the month.
And to build that system, we have a massive stack of sources to synthesize today. We're pulling from Dave Ramsey's classic 7 baby steps, those eye-opening negotiation tactics from Northwestern Mutual 2026 app guides from Yield Fund.
Lots of good tech updates in there, yeah.
Yeah, the Yield Fund stuff is great. We also have Wikipedia's breakdown of historical budgeting methodologies and some incredibly tactical roadmaps from Purse Strings, Investing with Purpose, and YouTube creator Sammy Ellard-King. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the foundational concept across all these sources is what financial planners call the routing problem.
The routing problem.
Right. When people feel broke, they naturally assume they have an income problem, like they just aren't making enough. But more often than not, they actually have a routing problem.
Which means what exactly?
It means the money comes in, but it immediately leaks out through this cascade of tiny unmonitored drains before it ever reaches a savings account or a meaningful goal.
Got it. Which means before we can actually build wealth, we have to know exactly where those leaks are. We need an audit.
Yes.
The dreaded audit.
Yeah, the sources suggest a 30 to 90-day transaction inventory. But, doing that feels a bit like turning on the harsh fluorescent lights at the end of a really fun party.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
You suddenly see all the spills and the mess you just happily ignored while the music was playing. It's an uncomfortable reality check.
It is totally uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the mechanism of change. The source material from Purse Strings emphasizes that this audit step has to be done entirely without judgment.
No judgment.
Right. You aren't doing this to assign moral weight to your spending. You're doing it to gather sterile data.
Well, speaking of sterile data, Sammy Ellard-King has a fascinating, highly modern tactic for this audit. He suggests downloading your last 3 months of bank statements and plugging them directly into ChatGPT.
Which is such a 2026 approach to this.
It really is. You basically ask the AI to categorize every transaction into fixed expenses, discretionary spending, and debt.
Yeah.
You essentially treat your personal finances like a business's profit and loss statement.
It's a brilliant use of AI, honestly, because it removes the emotional friction. When an algorithm sorts the data, you stop agonizing over every individual purchase, and you start seeing the macro-structural flow of your money.
Yeah.
You start noticing the low-joy purchases.
Oh, I love that term, low-joy purchases.
It's so accurate.
Like the random Amazon add-ons you buy at 11 p.m. Or in Sammy's YouTube video, he uses the example of Big John's Friday night Chinese takeaway.
Right, right.
And it's not that you have to ban the takeaway entirely. It's just realizing that you are spending massive amounts of your income on a habit that doesn't actually provide a proportional amount of happiness.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to ask the obvious technical question here. Am I supposed to just hand OpenAI my bank account number and all my personal financial data?
Oh, absolutely not. No. You never upload raw bank documents.
Okay, good.
What you do is export a sterile CSV file from your bank, completely strip out your account numbers, your name, and your address, and just feed the AI the dates, the amounts, and the merchant names.
Ah, okay.
That is literally all it needs to categorize the behavior.
That makes much more sense.
Yeah.
But let me push back a little on the whole concept of the audit. If we're just staring at past behavior under those harsh fluorescent lights, how does that actually change what I spend tomorrow?
Well, it fundamentally changes your psychology. You see, financial anxiety is rarely caused by bad numbers. It is caused by vague numbers.
Vague numbers.
Yeah, vague numbers allow your imagination to invent the absolute worst-case scenario. When you run a strict audit, you shrink the monster in the closet down to its actual mathematical size. Awareness is the prerequisite here. You cannot fix a leak you refuse to look at.
So the lights are on, we see the mess, and we know our numbers. The immediate next step in this 90-day reset is plugging those leaks to manufacture some quick momentum. Let's talk about the crisis of convenience, subscriptions.
Oh, the subscriptions. The average household right now is carrying 12 to 15 active subscriptions.
Wait, 15?
12 to 15, yeah. Streaming services, software, gym memberships, subscription boxes. We sign up for a free trial, we completely forget, and they quietly auto-renew in the background month after month.
So what's the move here?
The mandate from the sources here is ruthless but simple. Cancel anything you wouldn't actively and consciously sign up for today.
And then we get back to that Northwestern Mutual stat about debt negotiation from the start of the show. Only 25% of people contact their credit card company to negotiate a lower rate, but nearly 70% succeed. Why are we so afraid of making that call?
What's fascinating here is that we assume the bank holds all the power. But customer retention is a massive metric for credit card companies. They want to keep your business.
So how do you actually have that conversation? Because I feel like if I just call and say, please lower my rate, they're going to politely decline.
You have to come armed with leverage. You call them, and it has to be a phone call. Do not use an online chatbot for this. And you mention a competing offer you received in the mail from another bank.
Well, smart.
You politely ask them to match it. If the frontline representative says no, you calmly ask to speak to a retention manager.
And what if the manager says no?
If the manager refuses to lower the interest rate, you pivot and negotiate away the annual fees instead. There's almost always a concession to be made if you press the issue.
That is incredible. And beyond just stopping the bleeding on debt, there is quick cash to be found everywhere if you just look for it. Sammy points out that bank account switching can earn you between 175 to 200 pounds, or, dollars, depending on your region, just for moving your direct debits to a new bank.
Which often sounds like a scam to people. I mean, why would a bank just hand you $200?
Exactly. I'd be suspicious.
It comes down to customer acquisition cost. Banks know that once you move your primary checking account to them, you are highly likely to stay for a decade and eventually use them for highly profitable products like mortgages or car loans.
Ah, I see.
Paying you $200 up front is incredibly cheap marketing for them.
That makes total sense when you look at it from the bank's perspective. The sources also recommend price checking your car and home insurance every 12 months, selling old items sitting in your loft, and using cashback sites like Top Cashback to get money back on the spending you're already doing anyway.
The underlying strategy here isn't just to scrounge up a few extra dollars. When you suddenly free up 10 to 20% of your income through these quick localized wins, your brain receives a massive dopamine signal that real change is happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You are manufacturing behavioral momentum. That momentum is the fuel you will need for the heavier lifting ahead.
But here's the danger zone. Once we've freed up that extra cash, if we don't put a rigid system in place to manage it, that cash will just evaporate all over again. We need a financial operating system. Wikipedia outlines a great historical menu of budgeting methodologies, and Yield Fund pairs these with the best app tech for 2026.
And it is vital to understand that there is no single best budget mathematically. There's only the best budget for your specific personality.
Right, so let's run through the menu. First up is zero-based budgeting. This is the aggressive approach where you give every single dollar a specific job the moment you get paid, until your remaining unassigned balance is exactly zero.
Very strict.
Yeah, apps like WineAbbey You Need a Budget are famous for this, and Dave Ramsey has the free Every Dollar app.
Yeah.
I always think of zero-based budgeting like a strict personal trainer who makes you log every single calorie. It is highly effective. But I have to ask, is it really a realistic fit for everyone? Like, if you have a fluctuating income, maybe you're a freelancer, zero-based sounds utterly exhausting.
It is exhausting, but that is actually the point. It is essentially a financial boot camp.
A boot camp.
Yeah, you aren't necessarily meant to do it forever. For someone drowning in debt or dealing with severe lifestyle creep, that exhausting level of total intentionality is required to break bad habits. But you are right. If it is too high friction, people just abandon it.
Which brings us to the alternative. The pay yourself first method, sometimes called the 80-20 budget.
Huh.
You immediately siphon off 20% for savings and investments the second your paycheck hits, and you just freely spend the remaining 80% however you want without tracking it.
Much simpler.
Yeah, that feels more like setting your alarm clock across the room. Once the hard part is done, getting out of bed, or in this case, saving the 20%, you don't really have to think about it anymore.
It is a phenomenal approach for people who suffer from decision fatigue and absolutely hate tracking individual expenses.
Wikipedia also highlights Kakaibo, the mindful Japanese ledger system where you manually write down your spending and sort it into categories like needs, wants, cultural, and unexpected.
I love that one.
It's very intentional.
Yeah.
And if we look at the 2026 app landscape, Yield Fund has some great recommendations. They note Monarch Money is fantastic for couples because it provides a shared net worth view.
Which is a brilliant feature because shared visibility is the #1 preventative measure against financial infidelity.
Right. Then there is Copilot Money, which uses advanced AI categorization and has a gorgeous interface for Apple users. And finally, Pocket Guard, which literally boils your entire complex financial life down to one single number. Your in my pocket disposable income.
The math behind Pocket Guard is incredibly liberating. It takes your estimated income, subtracts all your upcoming fixed bills, subtracts the goals you've set, and whatever is left is your safe-to-spend number.
Just one number.
Yeah, you don't have to look at 10 different categories. You just look at that one number before you buy a coffee.
But here is the flaw with every single system we just mentioned. They all rely on you being perfectly disciplined. And, well, human willpower is fragile. If we want this to work, we have to remove the human element entirely.
We do. There is a quote from the Investing with Purpose source that sums this up perfectly. They say, automation is not laziness. It is the removal of willpower from the equation. And willpower is a depletable resource.
Wow, that's so true.
If your financial health relies on you making the mathematically correct choice every single payday when you are tired, stressed, and hungry, you will eventually fail.
So to completely bypass willpower, Sammy Ellard King recommends the 3-bank system. And the mechanics of this are genius.
They really are.
Bank 1 is your current account where your paycheck actually lands. This account is strictly for your safe discretionary spending money. Bank 2 is a completely separate account solely for your fixed bills, rent, and subscriptions. And Bank 3 is your savings or investment account.
The routing is what makes it work. On payday, you do not pay your bills first. You set up an automated direct debit to move your savings to Bank 3 immediately. Then a second automated transfer moves the exact calculated amount you need for your bills into Bank 2.
So whatever is left sitting in Bank 1 is totally guilt-free. You don't have to mental math your way through a purchase at the grocery store, wondering if you're accidentally spending your electricity bill.
Right, because it's gone.
The electricity bill is already sitting safely in Bank 2, waiting to be auto-drafted. Now, if you're listening to this while driving to work, you might be thinking, I don't have enough money left over at the end of the month to worry about spreading it across 3 different banks.
That is a very common objection, but the 3-bank system isn't about the absolute amount of money you have. It is about ratios and cash flow management. Even if you are only transferring $20 to Bank 3 and keeping your margins razor thin, you are building the automated habit.
It's the muscle memory.
Exactly. You are enforcing your priorities automatically before you even have a chance to look at the balance.
Okay, so the routing system is fixed. We have newly freed up cash from plugging our leaks, and it is flowing automatically. Where is it actually going? The sources are unanimous here. It goes straight to emergencies and debt. Dave Ramsey's baby step 1 is to save a $1,000 starter emergency fund.
A crucial first step.
Yeah, and Sammy's video shares this incredible story about a woman named Tracy. She saved her first emergency fund, and the psychological relief made her feel so empowered that she finally had the leverage to leave a job she absolutely hated.
That story illustrates the true value of an emergency buffer. We tend to think of emergency funds as money for a flat tire or a broken boiler. But really, it is about buying yourself space, options, and peace of mind.
Freedom, basically.
Yes! It shifts your posture in the world from defensive and reactive to secure and proactive.
And once that starter buffer is in place, we attack the debt. This brings us to one of the most famous debates in personal finance, the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche.
This raises an important question. Is personal finance primarily a math problem, or is it a behavior problem?
Well, if we were perfectly rational robots, it would just be a math problem. And the avalanche method would win every single time. That is where you list your debts and pay off the one with the absolute highest interest rate first, regardless of the balance. Mathematically, that saves you the most money over time.
But we aren't perfectly rational robots.
No, we definitely aren't.
We are highly emotional creatures. That is why the snowball method, where you ignore the interest rates completely and just pay off your smallest balance first, is so heavily recommended by Ramsey and others.
Is for the quick wins.
Yes, it builds necessary psychological momentum. Seeing a debt completely disappear from your life fuels your motivation to keep going when things get difficult.
However, the sources do note a very real mathematical caveat here. If you have credit card rates sitting above 20%, the mathematical penalty of ignoring those high rates through the snowball method becomes very hard to justify.
Exactly. You have to know yourself. Are you motivated by crossing quick wins off a list, or are you motivated by optimizing a spreadsheet? You choose the method that ensures you won't quit.
Either way, you clear the high-interest debt. And once you do, we cross the threshold into month 3 of the reset, the transition from merely surviving your finances to actively building wealth.
This is the phase most people unfortunately never reach. But once your starter buffer is built and the consumer debt is gone, you move to Ramsey's next steps. Baby step 3 is expanding that emergency fund to cover a full 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Baby step 4 is investing 15% of your household income into retirement.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We start talking about your freedom number. Have you ever heard of the rule of 25? It is an incredibly powerful concept. You calculate how much your life costs to run for 1 year, and you multiply that by 25.
Let's walk through the math on that.
Yeah, so if all your expenses, housing, food, fun, everything, cost $48,000 a year, you multiply that by 25. Your freedom number is $1.2 million.
And that number isn't just an arbitrary goalpost. It is directly tied to what the financial independence community calls the 4% rule.
Which is huge.
Right. The mechanics here are crucial. The idea is that if you have your freedom number invested in the broader market, you can safely withdraw 4% of that total pot every single year to live on, and historically, the pot will essentially last indefinitely.
Let's explain why that 4% is the magic safe withdrawal rate, because you're investing in broadly diversified vehicles like the S&P 500 or global index funds. Historically, over the long term, the stock market returns an average of around 8 to 10% a year.
Right.
Now, inflation is going to eat about 2 to 3% of that purchasing power. So your real inflation-adjusted growth is roughly 5 to 5.5%. If you were only withdrawing 4%, your money is actually growing faster than you were spending it.
Precisely. And you optimize this further by using tax-advantaged accounts. If you are in the UK, you use an ISA, an individual savings account, or a pension. If you are in the US, you use a 401k or a Roth IRA.
Gotta avoid those taxes.
Absolutely. These accounts act as a legal shield, ensuring the government isn't taking a massive tax bite out of your compounding growth.
Yes, suddenly, your money is literally going to work, clocking in every single day and making its own money. It's a total paradigm shift.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the ultimate identity shift the 90-day reset is designed to create. In month 1, when you are terrified of your bank statements, your internal narrative is, I am someone who is trying to fix my broken finances.
Yeah.
But by month 3, when you are calculating safe withdrawal rates, your narrative becomes, I am someone who is building wealth. Money stops being this terrifying, vague stressor you have to manage, and it becomes capital that you deploy to buy back your time.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's summarize the architecture of what we've built today. You start by looking at the hard data, auditing 90 days of bank statements with zero judgment, maybe using AI to help strip away the emotion.
A great first step.
Then, you plug the immediate leaks by negotiating your credit card rates and ruthlessly hunting down forgotten subscriptions. You pick an operating system that fits your personality, whether that's a zero-based boot camp or a relaxed 80-20 split.
And you automate it.
Yes. You remove your fragile willpower by automating cash flow through a 3-bank setup. You build a starter buffer, you crush the debt using the snowball or avalanche, and finally, you calculate your freedom number and let compound interest take the wheel.
And through all of this, remember that financial progress absolutely does not require perfection.
Yeah.
You will have months where you overspend on a dinner or forget a transfer.
Oh, definitely. We all do.
The point is not to be flawless. The point is to have an automated system that catches you. A system built on intention and consistency that keeps humming in the background, even when your personal motivation inevitably fails.
I want to leave you with one final, incredibly provocative thought today. It actually comes from our Wikipedia source, of all places. When discussing the history and application of personal budgets, Wikipedia notes that the concept is now being widely used in the social care sector. Governments in several countries are moving away from managing care for disabled or elderly individuals and are instead giving those individuals direct, literal cash budgets to manage their own care needs.
It's a massive shift in public policy.
It is. And do you know why they are doing it?
Yeah.
Because the data clearly shows that providing an individual with autonomy and total control over their own resources leads to profoundly better life outcomes than top-down, bureaucratic institutional management.
It empowers the individual to prioritize what actually matters to their specific daily life rather than what an administrator assumes they need.
Exactly. So think about the profound implication of that. If massive, slow-moving bureaucratic healthcare institutions have realized that giving an individual total autonomous control over their own budget leads to a profoundly better life, well, imagine how much power you hold over your own future. You are the ultimate authority of your own microeconomy.
Nobody else is coming to manage it for you. The responsibility, but also the total freedom, is entirely yours.
So ask yourself as you open up that banking app today, are you actively managing your money, or are you letting your money manage you?